54. So Jesus came again into Cana of Galilee, where he made the water wine. And there was a certain nobleman whose son was sick at Capernaum. When he heard that Jesus was come out of Judea into Galilee, he went unto him, and besought him that he would come down and heal his son, for he was at the point of death. Then said Jesus unto him, Except ye see signs and wonders, ye will not believe. The nobleman saith unto him, Sir, come down ere my child die. Jesus saith unto him, Go thy way, thy son liveth. And the man believed the word that Jesus had spoken unto him, and he went his way. And as he was now going down, his servants met him, and told him, saying, Thy son liveth. Then inquired he of them the hour when he began to amend. And they said unto him, Yesterday at the 7th hour the fever left him. So the father knew that it was at the same hour in which Jesus saith unto him, Thy son liveth, and himself believed, and his whole house. This is again the second miracle that Jesus did when he was come out of Judea into Galilee. So following Jesus turning the water to wine in Cana, it is recorded in chapter 2, verse 12, that he went to Capernaum, which was about 23 miles. And after a short time in Capernaum, John 2, verse 13, he then went to Jerusalem, which would have been a journey of about 85 miles. And while in Jerusalem, he performed miracles. Notice in John chapter 2, verse 23. Now when he was in Jerusalem at the Passover and the feast day, many believed in his name when they saw the miracles which he did. Now that's key to the passage we just read. Though the miracles are not specifically mentioned that he worked in Jerusalem, but he worked miracles while he was in Jerusalem. In John 4, verse 3, Jesus leaves Judea, Jerusalem, and heads again to Galilee. And if you remember, he must needs pass through Samaria. He passed through Samaria, and that's where we read of the event of the woman at the well. He spent 2 days in Samaria. And then you come to John 4, verse 43, and he arrives in Galilee. And after 2 days he departed thence and went into Galilee. In verse 46, Jesus came again into Cana and Galilee. So he arrives in Galilee. So Jesus is there. And he is there as God in the flesh. He is there as the Almighty, the possessor of all power in heaven and in earth. He is there as the immutable, immortal one, the omniscient, the infinite one, the always all-sufficient one. He's there. And he is there. He is above all. He is superior to all. He is beyond all. He is there as God's provision, as God's remedy. He is there. And he is everything that the people need. He is there in pity, in care, tenderness, kindness. So Jesus came into Cana of Galilee, where he made water to wine. Jesus, the one who had earlier in Cana of Galilee brought about a miraculous, unexplainable transformation, brought about fulfillment and abundant provision. In verse 45 of John 4, then when he was come into Galilee, the Galileans received him. Now why? Having seen all the things that he did at Jerusalem at the feast. Remember, he just left Jerusalem. He's made that journey back to Cana of Galilee. For they also went unto the feast. So the reason that they're there, the reason that they are so excited and welcoming Jesus, is because they had seen the miracles which he did in Jerusalem. So these Galileans, they had made the trip to Jerusalem for the Passover, John 2 verse 13. And they have now traveled back some 85 miles. They've traveled back, and no doubt, before Jesus arrived, again, he stayed back in Samaria for a little while, they had spread word of what they had witnessed in Jerusalem. And now many have gathered. And it says the Galileans received him. Now, that reception is not what it first appears. Jesus, the subject, the theme, the message of the Word of God, he is received there. But it's not a reception that truly honored him. But it was truly, it was merely an interest. It was an excitement concerning what he might do next. He turned the water to wine earlier. He goes to Jerusalem. He performs many miracles. What's he going to do next? So the people receive him, sparked by spectacle and miracle working. They have no real interest in his person. It's what might he do next. And this is brought out in Jesus' words to the nobleman in the hearing of those gathered. Verse 48, then said Jesus unto him, the nobleman, but so all could hear, except ye see signs and wonders, ye will not believe. So he's rebuking them. The only reason that they're there is to see what he will do. So in light of what he said in verse 48, Jesus is there, but the overall atmosphere is one of unbelief and self-centeredness. What's he going to do next? He's there, and he would perform a miracle of transformation. And he is still the one who can. So we want to speak on a nobleman's son brought from the brink of death. So we want to look, we see first of all a picture of need. We see the miracle involved a nobleman. Verse 46, of those who gathered that day in Galilee, special note is taken. There was a certain nobleman. There was a certain nobleman. Those words should not be passed over with little thought and consideration. There was a certain nobleman. They are a large part of the account. They are a significant part of the account. And they also, those words, there was a certain nobleman, reveals the character of Christ. Jesus is there, and there was a certain nobleman. Jesus came into Cana of Galilee, and there was a certain nobleman. Now think about that. Think about that nobleman. The nobleman was a royal officer. He's an officer in the service of Herod. This is amazing. This is a man who worked for Herod. He is a man with connection to Herod. He is a high-ranking official, associated, aligned with the government of Herod. The very government that played a significant role in crucifying Christ. A certain nobleman was there. He is a man who served in the government of Herod. And Jesus knew who this nobleman worked for. He knew who he worked for. Again, this is often passed over. There was a certain nobleman. It tells us of the character of Christ, the grace and mercy of Christ. This nobleman, he's a central figure, central character in the record of this miracle. And again, it's a marvelous wonder to whom Jesus performs miracles for. A certain nobleman. Someone says, well, I'm not worthy of a miracle. No, you're not. And neither was this nobleman. He's working for the enemy. All the grace and mercy of Christ displayed in His miracles. Jesus and a certain nobleman. Jesus is there, and unbeknownst to this nobleman, He's there for this nobleman. He's there for this nobleman's son. And that's the amazing grace of God. This nobleman is working for the enemy. But the Lord is there for him. So Jesus is there for a specific and yet unspecified individual. A certain nobleman. The word certain is an indefinite marker. It's used to introduce a particular individual without specifying their name. What it emphasizes is that the person's identity is not what is important here. Jesus is there. And He had come from Jerusalem to Cana of Galilee, about 85 miles, for this nobleman, for this nobleman's son. Jesus and a certain nobleman. In the same place, at the same time. Illustrating the marvelous providence of God. There was a great and desperate need. The nobleman's son, verse 46, was sick. But he's at Capernaum, some 23 miles away. It's not said what the sickness was, but the extent or the degree of the sickness is stated in verse 47, for he was at the point of death. He's pretty sick. It was a sickness that had brought his son. We don't know how old the son was. Could have been 1, 2 years old. May have been a man. We don't know. Doesn't matter. He's at the point of death. As a result of this sickness, he was about to die. So the situation is, verse 46 and verse 47, a certain nobleman whose son was sick at the point of death. That is an extremely serious and urgent situation. That is a great and overwhelming need concerning this nobleman. This nobleman, he had prestige, he had power, probably had wealth, seen in verse 51 that he had servants. But prestige, power, wealth did not prevent his son from becoming sick and now about to die. Again, a great and overwhelming need. Greater than this nobleman's prestige, greater than his power, greater than his wealth, a need that prestige, power, and wealth could not meet. This man's prestige and power and wealth could not fix this situation. So in spite of his prestige and power and wealth, this nobleman, sadness and trouble came into his household. A sadness and trouble that his position and his power and his wealth could not remedy. Even though the nobleman was a man of influence, that which was overwhelming, that which was troublesome and burdensome, had entered into his household. An overwhelming and consuming burden that personal influence could not relieve. Personal wealth, personal prestige could not relieve. Even though he was a man of high status, a problem and a difficulty greater than his high status had entered into and threatened his household. A certain nobleman whose son was sick at the point of death. In spite of his position and affliction, was in his home. An affliction greater than everything that the nobleman possessed. In this nobleman's home was an overwhelming sorrow and a heartache and a distress greater and beyond the nobleman. So this is a very grave and dire situation. It's an extremely critical situation. But you look at all the miracles of Christ. Every miracle of Christ starts with a need. Starts with a need. There isn't anybody here that doesn't have a need. There isn't anybody here that doesn't have several needs. More needs than we even realize. And that's where every miracle starts. It starts with a need. So here we have an overwhelming, terribly burdensome need has entered into this nobleman's life. And no doubt, he felt deeply the desperateness and urgency of his need. His son was sick, so much so that he was dying. And this, of course, was a tremendous burden. This was a heavy weight pressing down upon this nobleman. He no doubt was grievously troubled. worried, and distressed. He's under a tremendous strain. He's experiencing overwhelming heartache and sorrow. And he feels the urgency of the situation. And that is seen from his plea in verse 49. Come down ere before my child die. We have no time to spare here. This is an urgent situation. Come down ere my child die. And in those words you can hear a tone of love and concern for his son. This nobleman, in his time of need, heard of Jesus. Verse 47, it says, he heard that Jesus was come out of Judea into Galilee. Again, remember, these Galileans had gone to Jerusalem. They had seen Jesus perform miracles. I don't believe this nobleman went to Jerusalem. He stays back with his son. But when these Galileans return, what are they talking about? They're talking about the miracles that Jesus has performed. And this nobleman, under tremendous strain, watching his son deteriorate and getting closer and closer to the dying hour, he heard. He heard of Jesus returning to Cana. This nobleman heard something concerning Jesus, the one greater than any difficulty, the one greater than any problem, any trial, any pressure, the one greater than any turmoil or sorrow or heartache. He heard that Jesus has returned to Cana. The one who is greater than any anxiety or fear that you might have. He heard that he had left Judea, Jerusalem, and that he was back in Cana of Galilee. And he no doubt had heard about the miracles in Jerusalem that we read of in John 2, verse 23. Though the details of those miracles are not recorded for us, I believe this nobleman heard of the details of those miracles. That's what the people were talking about. He heard of miraculous wonders because of Jesus. And now Jesus is in Cana, 23 miles from Capernaum. This nobleman, knowing that his own prestige and power and wealth and influence could do nothing for his sick and dying son, he heard that Jesus was come out of Judea into Galilee. And no doubt when he heard, hope was aroused in him. And I imagine he thought to himself, perhaps this one named Jesus can heal my son. Perhaps this one who worked those miracles in Jerusalem, this one who turned water to wine, he might heal my son. So this nobleman came. Verse 47, it is recorded, he went unto him. It's not merely said that this nobleman went into Cana. It's much more than that. But he went unto him. Him. Jesus is his objective here. This nobleman traveled the mountainous terrain from Capernaum to Cana, again, approximately 23 miles. Overcoming the obstacles and the hindrances and the inconveniences involved in that journey. And he came to Jesus, realizing this is the only hope for my son. He came to him. He came in humility. Though he's a man of prestige and power and wealth and influence, he came, and in verse 47 we read, and besought him. He's a royal officer. And he came pleading. And he came begging on behalf of his son. And he came with a reverent and humble spirit. And no doubt a spirit of brokenness and submission. And he takes his place before the Lord. And he's intently focused upon Christ. Notice what it says there in verse 47. He went unto him and besought him that he would. Three pronouns referring to Jesus. Jesus has this nobleman's attention. So he came. And he came with his need. His plea was that he would come down and heal his son. The word heal conveys the idea of to make free, to free him from the sickness, to make well, to restore, to correct, to rectify, to remedy his son's sickness. That he would heal his son. And the nobleman was persistent in his pleading. In verse 47, the fact is stated that he went unto him and besought him. In verse 48, Jesus responded to the nobleman, and and at the same time addressing those who had gathered. And following that in verse 49, the nobleman saith unto him, Sir, come down, ere my child die. So that's twice. He's persistent in his plea. Ere my child die. The nobleman knew that his son needed a miracle. He knew that. And he knew that if healing was going to take place, Christ had to be the one to do it. He knew that. Oh, that we would know that as well. The nobleman pleaded with Christ, verse 47 and 49, to come to Capernaum and heal his son. Besought him that he would come down and heal his son. Sir, come down, ere my child die. The nobleman knew that Christ could heal his son and spare his life. And like ourselves, the nobleman knew that Christ could. But he did not fully realize or comprehend the greatness of Christ's power. We're the same way. We know we can, but we haven't even begun to comprehend the greatness of His power. The nobleman, in his limited and faulty thinking, thought that Christ must come to Capernaum to heal his son. Like ourselves, the nobleman had already established in his mind what was necessary for Christ to work the miracle. We do the same thing. We know we need a miracle, and we think in our mind how He will do it. You have no idea. You have no idea. The truth is, you don't even need to know how He'll do it. All you need to know is He will. The lesson for us is that we must not put Christ in the box of our preconceived ideas of how He will work. And we all do it. And we do it all the time. We know that He can. But how often we make the assumption, which often stems from our own personal agendas, limiting the Lord to our own thought process. We know that He can, but how often we limit Him in our minds with our expectations and our misconceptions. This nobleman thought that Christ must come to Capernaum to heal his son. He thought that was necessary. He, much like ourselves, thought Christ must act in a certain way. He'll act in His way. He'll act in His way. So let's look at the miracle itself. We're running out of time. We read in verse 54. This is again the second miracle. Now notice carefully, because this is so often misinterpreted. There's no period after those words. This is not the second overall miracle done by Christ. We've already seen, chapter 2, verse 23, that He did miracles in Jerusalem. But it is the second miracle that Jesus did when He was come out of Judea into Cana. It's the second miracle He worked in Cana of Galilee. He worked several miracles in Jerusalem. So again, those who have gathered in Cana are there because of what they had witnessed in Jerusalem. So Jesus heals this nobleman's son. And He did so without ever coming into personal contact with him. Again, the nobleman's son was in Capernaum, approximately 23 miles away. In verse 50, Jesus saith unto him, the nobleman, go thy way. Aren't you glad there's not a period there? Just go. Go. But it's go thy way, and there's a promise. Thy son liveth. Jesus spoke a word of healing, and the son was healed. It emphasizes the authoritative power of Christ's word. The healing was immediate. As the nobleman's on his way back home to Capernaum, some of his servants are rushing toward him. They're excited. And they have wonderful news. Thy son liveth. The very same words that Christ spoke. Exactly the same words that Christ spoke. The nobleman asked the hour he began to amend. That question reveals that the nobleman was not expecting an immediate healing. Again, we put Jesus in our little box. But he was expecting a gradual healing. What hour did he begin to amend? And the answer, yesterday. Again, this is a 23-mile journey. Yesterday, at the 7th hour, yesterday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. But they didn't say, yesterday at 1 o'clock, your son began to get better. That's not what it says. Notice. Yesterday at the 7th hour, and then notice verse 53, that it was the same hour that Jesus said, thy son liveth. Yesterday, the 7th hour, thy son liveth. The healing was immediate. Coincides with the words of Christ. Jesus did instantly and with ease what the nobleman's prestige, power, wealth, status, and influence could not do. Now notice the extent of the healing. Verse 52. Then inquired he of him the hour when he began to amend, and they said unto him, yesterday at the 7th hour. He began to feel better. That's not what they said. We began to see a little improvement. The fever left him. It was gone. The healing was immediate. The fever left him. And I believe that was as the result of the spoken word of Christ, 23 miles away. The fever was gone. Jesus took it away. And he did so how he saw fit. And he still does. God help us not to put him in our little box. Jesus healed the nobleman's heart also. There's a twofold healing here. He healed the nobleman's son, but did he not also heal the nobleman? Again, this nobleman was greatly stressed. He's overburdened with a heavy weight concerning the sickness and seemingly inevitable death of his son. This nobleman's days in life have been consumed with an almost unbearable heartache, and he's greatly distressed. But when he heard those words, thy son liveth, the fever left him. Oh, the joy that flooded his soul, and all the peace that came over him. Thy son liveth. The fever left him. And the distress and the anxiety and the unsettledness that was in the nobleman's heart, just like that fever, it's gone. It's gone. The nobleman hears those words, thy son liveth. The fever left him. And the struggles and the anguish and the discouragement and the sorrow and the heartache and the fear and the dread, they're all gone. The nobleman has been set free as well. Not just the son, but the nobleman has been set free from the heavy burden that he'd been bearing. And in his place, there was a gladness and a peace. There was relief. There was refreshing. There was settlement. Oh, what Jesus can do. Oh, what He can do. Oh, His grace and His mercy. This was done for a nobleman, an officer in the government of Herod. Oh, what He can do. God, help us not to put Him in our little box. Jesus will work any way He sees fit. You don't need to instruct Him how to do it. Just tell Him the need. Just tell Him the need. He'll work the miracle. Brother Ben, if you'll come and lead us in verse of Psalm.